Black revolutionaries, distillery owners, Italian fashion retailers, and Motown Grammy winners all share their best stories never before told in any other media outlets on Detroit is Different. Visit DetroitisDifferent.com or download the Detroit is Different app on Apple's App Store or Google's Play Store.
Now you all are in the studio. Hey. So, special event, Kari Frazier here with Detroit is Different and offering a different look at Detroit. I'm actually on location, Source Booksellers. This is one of the stores that has been around. And if you know anything about me, you know I love business. And I think that the success of a business is not how much money you make. It's not the people a part of it. It's not the connections and what people say and how many Instagram followers and all of that. I think a business is successful if it's been in business the longest time. Longevity. And this is one of the businesses that has stayed through a lot of iterations of the stuff happening in and around the city of Detroit, and definitely even in this pocket, because it's a lot of businesses that I thought would be around
that have come and gone, huh?
Yes, yeah. But to stay in business is a heck of a testament, especially Black woman-led business to stay around. That even more of a phenomenal feat. So connecting Detroit is Different to that. You all can check my archives and see when they showed up with books and all of that good stuff. And also, this is a place to buy some books. I'm reading the Grant Hill book right now, but there's so many more books than that. I'm just reading that book. You don't have to read it, but you can come here, tap into some knowledge, tap into some real books. Bookstores can still exist. They still do exist, yes. And I'm so grateful for this one. Yeah. And the bookstore kind of was the concept because I have a poet, someone that is with the words, writing them, speaking them, saying them, adding creativity, and a legacy person. So it's oozing in her veins. It's going all through her. Gia Scott-Heron, how are you today?
I am blessed and highly flavored, and glad to be here with you. Glad to be here in the city of Detroit.
Yes.
Yeah, glad to be out the rain. Because it's raining over in my part of the country right now. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, I'm blessed. I'm glad to be with you guys.
Well, thank you so much. And we actually have a intimate audience here. I did like one of those like invites to the people I knew, and I said, hey, pull up, come, check out what we're working on, what we're going to do today, because this will be an interesting interview that we want to have captured moving forward. So I usually start Detroit is Different interviews with what brought your people to Detroit. So because you are Cali, and we respect Cali, but your family got roots here, especially your pops. Right. What's the relationship between your family and specifically your father in the city of Detroit?
Sure. Little known fact, my dad's dad, Gil Herron, actually moved to the city of Detroit by way of Canada. They migrated from Jamaica, and my understanding is that they first went to Canada, and then he was the first to come over to the city of Detroit, and then one by one he brought his siblings over, but he worked at General Motors for, and I believe in excess of 30 years. And he had, his home here. And when he, after he split from my grandmother, my dad's mom, he got remarried and had my two uncles and my aunt. So Dennis and Kenny Herron, may they both rest in peace and power. And my aunt, Gil Herron, who's still alive and with us. So blessed to have her. So, yeah. Okay,
so that means that you Detroiters, if you were walking around and you're like, man, that kind of looks like Gil Scott-Heron, you probably may have seen a family member, and it was probably
because the resemblance was unreal. Like, if you see a picture of my grandfather, Gil Herron, and you look at my uncle Dennis Herron, Kenny Herron, or my dad, they all look like photocopies of one another. It is insane. The family resemblance is so strong. So, yeah, very likely.
Okay, and for you, California. And when we think Cali and what that connection is, what do you think it was about California, as your dad definitely spent some time in the Midwest? What made him want to go west, and what would he speak of when he would think of this way in this part of the country? And saying, you know what, I think that this may be a better place to start, family, grow, live creatively?
Oh, yeah, no. The only thing that brought him to LA was my mom. And the fact
that
that's
can happen.
where she, was born and raised. My mom's side of the family, they came from Louisiana. And then when my mom was 2 months old, they moved to California, first in Northern California in Richmond, and then ultimately in Los Angeles. So that's where my parents met, was at the Roxy in Los Angeles. So, but once they got married, they actually, my first 3 years of my life, after I was born in LA. Okay. So, Cedar Sinai Hospital is on my birth certificate. But after that, we went right back to Alexandria, Virginia. My dad had actually purchased a home, the home of Roberta Flack. He purchased the home from her, and that's where my family lived until 1983. And then when my parents split, my mom and I moved back to Los Angeles, and my dad went to New York.
Okay. Yeah. Now, with that in artistry, you carry this legacy too. Your father is one of the giants when we think of poetry, and then just even some of the quotes, some of the words, the inspirations. Even promoting this event, I had so many people like just even send like emails saying, his work kept me through this or was an anchor in that. You now are in this space too creatively. Was it the inspiration of your father, or was it something in you as well that, has committed you into this artistry of poetry?
Okay, well, basically, I've heard so many wonderful anecdotes of people, and same thing. My inbox gets flooded, especially after he passed away. But just in the years since, so many people say, "Oh man, your father's music got me through addiction. Your father's music got me through my divorce. Your father's music helped me meet my wife. Your father's music was playing, at this, event, and just different milestones for people, and the meaning that my dad's how much he meant to them. And so it is just very humbling, and just it's just amazing to think about how many lives my father touched. So it's a huge responsibility, but when my father passed away, I felt like somebody has to carry this on. If it were up to the powers that be, they would put his music catalog in a coffin and bury it right beside him if they could. So, I said someone has to be the steward and take the baton and keep the marathon continues, right? So, the legacy continues as well.
So, as I always tell people, I don't have scripted questions. I have a conversation with
Right.
Detroit is Different. And you just touched on something that opens up a conversation gateway for me. You said if it were up to the powers that be, your father's work would be buried beside him. So that opens up a world of questions for me. It's like, okay, first off, was this something, did you see this yourself? Did your father share this information with you? Was this more like a music industry looking to suppress your father's artistry and his voice? Was this, furthermore, it could be more nefarious. Was it like the government looking to suppress your father's voice? Was it possibly other performers and people in that industry? How and was it shared with you from his perspective, or was this something that you've seen and witnessed yourself? So I know I asked a lot of questions, so let's start with one. How did your father acknowledge that his work was being suppressed, and when did he open up and just even share that information with you?
No, that was not a conversation that we had. It's just something that when you pay attention, Clive Davis wanted my dad to keep making hits like The Bottle and The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. And it's kind of like he was more interested in making money than making music that matters. And so, in terms of, they just had a difference of opinion in that regard. He wanted my dad to keep, making the charts. And my dad wanted to keep hearing, following the callings of the spirits. So it was whatever they told him to write. He didn't dictate. They told him. So I don't know. But it was just clear, just from what I've been told since my father passed away, how he first became addicted to crack cocaine was that it's a plant. Just this white guy that ended up having, like, my mom just started seeing him at every single one of my dad's shows, everywhere. And he always had access to the green room backstage and always had unfettered access to my dad. And before you know it, he would have his arm around my dad's shoulder and they'd be making their way to someplace more private. And then my dad would come back altered.
Now, when you speak about this, and I like how you presented that, because you're just speaking from the stories you've heard and things that have been witnessed. Mm-hmm. You also mentioned a giant, as is dictated in the music industry, and a heavy influencer. I'm gonna use the now modern term,
right,
in pop culture, of Clive Davis. I'm definitely not saying that, as they say, correlation does not necessarily mean that
causation.
Exactly.
Right.
But it has been even documented and spoken on before that a lot of artists that were very successful in working with Clive Davis have struggled with many drug addictions. One of my big homies, another one that passed away, rest in peace, Queen Mother Ocean Daru, Nefertiti L. Her brother wrote a lot of hits for the Dramatics, and the Dramatics at the time were one of the artists that worked with Clive Davis for a couple of records. So he wrote "What You See Is What You Get." Okay. He wrote "In the Rain." He wrote a couple others, but her belief was definitely, and I know she just shared this candidly, that people that were associated with Clive Davis, maybe not him specifically, led to that. But also Clive's relationship with Sly Stone, another one of the funk legends. Also right. Clive's relationship with Whitney Houston. Right. And I mean, these are a couple. I mean, so when we look at this, and I've also interviewed some other active entertainment attorneys, not like Mr. Reed that's in the audience now. Reed actually gave one of the richest interviews I have. You need to check that archive. But another one, and speaking about that presence of mind, mm-hmm. to make decisions if a person is struggling with addiction, and what that does, and the way that so many artists, as I've heard, because the response I got from this executive in person, and it was, sometimes the artist needs to get up and then they need to get down. Then you get up, then you get down. Meaning that, you need a drug for up and a drug for down because of the stresses connected to being that traveling performer. You may have a tour with, you may go through, in 30 days, you may be in 20 different cities. Sure. You're on a bus. You may not be getting necessarily a good restful sleep. Right. I didn't even hear about some of the opioid-related drugs that have been said to be the substances that Michael Jackson, Prince, and Whitney Houston were taking. Yeah. And I know I'm giving a lot of context before I lead to this, but I want to, because I'm not even giving a clear gate. But do you believe that a performer is, when connected to entities where they're making so much money, mm-hmm. Do you think to be that stretched out, to be that persistence in this space, is that healthy for a natural body without anything else? And then furthermore, what role and responsibility do you think that entities working with that artist should play? And that could be not just a record label. I could be an agent. I could be a manager. I could be a publicist. I could be a traveling manager. Like, what relationship do I have to keep the artists paid, but also to keep them healthy?
Right. Well, there's a lot packed in that. But there's a lot of things that are natural substances that can do just as good as not better as substitutes for drugs that they pump people with. But they're not going to give you those things. They're going to keep you dependent on the bad stuff. You know what I mean? They don't, because, you could get B12 or B6 or ginkgo or ginseng or echinacea your damn self. But if it's by prescription and you need to rely on somebody else to procure it for you, and you're dependent on that, and there's more money in keeping you dependent than it is for you to independently, you know what I mean, feed yourself the right things, or, have a nutritionist or someone that helps you with that. So, I mean, there's a lot of interests, self-interests, that will prevent them from doing the right thing, because that's too much like right, and that doesn't benefit them. If it doesn't make them dollars, then it doesn't make sense. And they'd rather do the nefarious thing and keep that money rolling, because it is a money-making industry, you know what I mean? And then there are things like for, when an artist has a cold, or I saw Cat Williams once. He was saying that he had broken his arm or something like that, but they gave him a Percocet and something else, and he's like, ninjas, I feel like I could crash through a wall right now. Like I could break a brick wall. And, he just, it was like, he's like, I don't feel nothing right now in this arm. So it was just like, they were laughing, but it was like, I mean, is that really like a good thing? Like, but I mean, the show must go on. You're not going to say, oh, let's cancel the show and, lose out on however many thousands of dollars because you broke your arm. No, we're going to prop you up. We're going to give you this stuff, and you're going to go out there and you're going to kill it.
So, and I guess that's where I'm asking you, should the show go on always?
I mean, it depends. You know what I mean? I think it's a case-by-case thing. It depends on, how severe the illness or injury is but if it's like the flu, then, or like COVID, heaven forbid, then cancel it. But if it's like a mild cold and the doctor feels like it's not that bad, and just drink some lemon and honey tea or whatever, and, don't talk too much before the show, you have to go based on common sense, I guess, and what the experts say, depending on what you've been diagnosed with or what injury you've sustained. I can't say a blanket statement like, oh, the show must always go on, or, oh, the show can never go on. It's it depends on what it is.
And that's why you should have good representation when you are an artist, because you should have the representation that has different clauses in that space. And it's unique. We're speaking about this a couple weeks after the Super Bowl and the halftime performance from Rihanna, which during the performance, you even saw like the trending tweets saying, oh, Rihanna's fat. Rihanna looks fat. What's going on? She's not even dancing. She's not giving a good performance. And then people are like, okay, is Rihanna pregnant? And then if she's pregnant, then what happens from there? The idea. The
comparisons to Cardi B and Beyonce and others who were pregnant and still gave show-stopping performances.
Exactly. And this is like, but these are the
but
things.
She's not them. Everyone has to, everyone is their own individual person. They have their own strengths, and they have, and every pregnancy is different too. Let's keep that real. Let's not act like every pregnancy is a happy pregnancy and an easy pregnancy, and I can just dance and twerk and shake. And no, you can't always do that. Sometimes you feel like my grandmother, when she was pregnant with my mom, she said she felt like death warmed over. It was so hard. She felt sick as a dog all the time, like, and tired, and, so yeah, it's, But then you have Keke Palmer. She is living her best pregnant life. I'm like, oh, I want a pregnancy like that. Like pregnancy goals or something. Like I don't know if it's all an act, because she is an actress, but that's some dang good acting if that's an act. Because she looks so happy and glowing and just energetic and blessed and just doing all. I'm so happy for her. Like, I want every woman to have a wonderful, happy, exciting, wonderful experience being pregnant, but that's just not the reality.
Yeah.
So, you got to take that into account. Like, I told you what happened with my mom. They wanted her to sign a contract saying that if she were to...
you have to give this whole story now, because we had a car ride conversation from the airport. So first, your mom, introduce who your mom is, actress, known, and please share.
I would love to, because I think that, a lot of people need to be given their flowers, especially while they're still alive. Like, my father has passed on, and may he rest in peace, power, and paradise. And he deserves all the flowers, all the bouquets, most definitely when it comes to music and proto-rap and spoken word and activism. But my mom deserves her flowers too. She was an actress during the blaxploitation era. I'm using air quotes. And she was in a lot of different movies, as we discussed: Cleopatra Jones, Mandingo, Skin Game. What was the one that you saw that she was in?
Black Gun.
Yeah, with Jim Brown.
She was on a Good Times episode
where she was JJ's girlfriend, and it was an episode where the couch got burned, and they were trying to figure out who was responsible for the hole in the couch being burned. Was it Michael's chemistry set? Was it Thelma's cooking? Or was it my mama's cigarette when she sat down on the couch? Her character's name was Mandy. And then she was also on an episode of The Love Boat with Suzanne Summers. And she was also on the Streets of San Francisco, a really short-lived spinoff called Aussie Girls. It was a spinoff of Ozzie and Harriet, but it didn't really work out. So it only lasted a few episodes. But yeah, she was in a lot of stuff from 1970 to 1980. So yeah, she ultimately left the business because they wanted her to sign a contract releasing them from all liability and responsibility if she were to miscarry or lose her pregnancy as a result of the roles that they were going to be offering her. So she declined, and that was that. She never looked back, and she's been living her best life ever since. I am not mad. She is very much not on social media, but she has a lot of fan pages. I let her know, I go, Mom, look, and she's very grateful, but she's kind of shy. I mean, no one would think that, given her career and like what she ended up, what she chose to do, which was modeling and then acting. But yeah, she's actually, like, in real life, IRL, she is super bashful and shy. And I said, but Mom, you're never shy with me. She's like, you're my baby. Like, so, luckily I didn't have to, like, break through that shell, because but I've seen her with other people, like, when she would get spotted in the grocery store or at the beach, they'd be like, aren't you Brenda Sykes? And my mom would be like, yes. And they'd be like, oh my goodness, how, I used to see you all the time. What happened? And my mom would be like, oh, well, I have my baby here. And, I just decided to be a mom. And they'd be like, oh, okay. And they'd say, you look so good still. And my mom would be like, oh, okay, well, thank you so much. I would see it. I would see the shyness, and, like, she would be, like, wanting to get back to the car. Like, she did not want to engage.
That's funny.
But she's, she's very modest and sweet. And, yeah, I think she deserves flowers as well for what she did and then what she chose to do.
Yeah, that's very admirable, and it's so tough. And this is where when we think about, even in that time, when we think of women's rights, what the strides made in the past 30 years that seem to be like just common sense things. I'm 40 now, so I remember being a kid looking at the appointment of Clarence Thomas and just looking at just even the way the back and forth.
Yeah,
like,
I'm right there with you. I'm 42.
It was like the spin even from our current president. Our current president, even before running, was like, let me apologize to Anita Hill for the way that Senate, Congress, and even television framed it from, women be lying. That was basically the whole framework at the time.
Because there was no Me Too. There was no Time's Up. There was no hashtag this or that.
Yeah.
And, it was, very much like blame the victim. Or you're just making it up. Just like they would tell black people about us being beaten and, brutalized by the cops. Oh, you're exaggerating. You're fabricating. You're, you're imagining it. And then we see it on video all the time now. It's
and
we were telling the truth all the time. No need to exaggerate. It's bad enough, ain't it?
Very much so. And so it's just something to think that that things that are commonplace in human rights issues, because that's the other thing. Like, a lot of this falls under the anchor of human rights that should exist. And even more sad, it's like even with the Phil Kavanaugh hearing, basically, and that's after the Me Too. It was the same. It was the same
thing.
Situations the same way. And pivoting, you led right into like you not being shy. You said you're going to carry this legacy on and engage with this. So when you started after the passing of your father, what were some of the pieces you wrote? And then share with us some things, and how did you go about, what's your creative process?
Oh, man. You always like do these compacted questions.
Yeah.
It's like so dense. But I mean, basically, like I said, when my father passed, I felt like it was important to, the thing about parents is they always want to protect their children. And so one of the last discussions we had before he passed away, he was like, "Are you sure you want this?" And I was like, well, with and without you, I've been doing this for a long time, Dad, even, while working at UCLA. I know you want me to just have a 9-to-5 job, but, I just feel it feels natural to me to be on stage. And he was like, okay, if you're sure you want this, then I'll make some phone calls and we'll get you in the studio. We'll fly you out to New York and get you started on an album. So the fact that he had confidence and believed in me before he passed away meant a lot to me, because I opened for him at, Yoshi's 6 months before he passed away. And it was a piece called Hot. And I could do a little bit of it.
Yeah, do a little bit of it.
All right. My pops, Gil Scott, is hotter than a heister trying to sell you a laptop with the serial number scratched off. He's hot like touching a stovetop with no mitten. Hot like y'all too young to cook, but y'all still in the kitchen trying to see what grandmama and him fixing. So hot you can't resist stand. He's like 100 degrees in a black SUV with the windows rolled up and stuck and no working AC. Forget the jacuzzi. He's hot like pure steam. And me, I'm so hot even my lyrics sweat. I'm so hot, I got thoughts burning on the back burner that I ain't even thought of yet. Like Nikki Giovanni, I'm so hot, even my errors are correct. I'm so hot, I don't even need spell check. I'm hot like a grenade that's missing its clip, hotter than a bomb that ticks, hotter than buttermilk biscuits. I'm hotter than a teenager's armpits when they're getting their first kiss. I'm hotter than HD TV. I'm hotter than July. I'm hotter than your thighs after your mama done hit you with the switch like 55 times. And then I go about talking about my daddy and me together, how when we team up, we're even hotter than that.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Very creative. So, as I say, what's your approach? That was like rapid fire. It was rhythm. What? When you write, do you write? Do you just freestyle? What's your?
That one was actually in response to my dad, because, again, he would always push. do you want this? Are you ready for this? He always questioned not only my ability in terms of talent, but just my ability to handle everything that comes with it. And so this was me kind of showing him, listen, I can handle it. I'm a dragon lady. Dragon lady spit fire. What's up? What's good? You know what I mean? So it was me like letting him know what's up and what's good. So that was the catalyst for that, was me just trying to let him know what it was. And so that's my thing too. I guess my process is anything that triggers me. It's like a grain of sand that agitates an oyster, and then the oyster secretes those, I don't know, those that hardens and makes a pearl.
I'm saying yes, but
Right.
that Animal Planet episode I completely missed. So
Okay.
please enlighten me.
Okay, there's a process. The reason why some oysters have pearls in them is that despite how like clammed up they are, their shell, every now and then a little grain of sand gets stuck in there, and it's very soft on the inside of that shell, and it agitates the tissues of the oyster, so it starts secreting a substance that coats the grain of sand so that it can't agitate it anymore. It can't rub up against it and bother it. So the secretions harden over time, but they're very, smooth, again, to prevent irritation of the oyster, and it creates a pearl.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah.
See, you get all types of information on Detroit is different.
So
Lord knows.
I'm the same way. As a Pisces, I am a water sign, and when things agitate my spirit, the thing that I secrete is lyrics and and words and poems, until I'm no longer agitated anymore. And if it really helps me, I share it with other people, and ultimately my wish is that it helps them in some way. And a lot of them come back, they respond to me, and they tell me, and especially on YouTube, it's so fantastic now that I have a YouTube channel. They tell me in the comment section. I get to see in real time from all over the world, from Germany and Norway and Sweden and all these wonderful places, South Africa. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I like doing that.
And you speak in this, so I'm guessing you've been writing. If that's just your process of like dealing with life coming at you, you've been writing much longer than this, than when you were telling your dad, "Hey, I'm about to get into this."
Oh yeah, no, I'd been writing all through college. The first poem I wrote was when the Rodney King beating occurred. I wrote a piece called World War III, and I questioned the actions not only of the police but the response to the verdict, and because we were shooting ourselves in the foot, we were cutting off our own nose to spite our face. I mean, and yeah, it was because we were apoplectic and we had more than enough, but the result was still the same, that it was destruction in our own community. So it kind of like we hurt ourselves because we were already hurt.
So it's interesting how you drive me to another one of those points, because you just drove me right into we almost lost Detroit.
Right.
And it's an excellent documentary, co-produced by rest in peace John Singleton, that I want to say is on either CNN or TBS, about the 25-year anniversary of the LA Rebellion. In Detroit, we often use rebellion because of the frustration. And then also, we push back on the concept of like, how much are these communities our communities when the ownership and the equity in this community is not shared, but we're imposed upon. We're the consumers, we're the customers, we're the people that live here. We're the tenants, but being the owners, the business owners, the producers, that's rare. And looking at that documentary only heightened more of what I remember hearing and recalling from different people sharing their own stories of the rebellion here. And to speak to that, how did seeing that at being there in, how did that impact you, knowing that, seeing some of those communities and that happening? You immediately went to writing.
Mm-hmm. Well, because my mom kept me out of school. I remember my cousin was trying to help pick someone up from work, and on the way there was so much smoke in the air that she came home with a headache from just from all the air quality was terrible for days after that. And I don't know, I just, it's like I saw it from both sides. I understood we were mad, but at the same time, it's like, this helped us how? Is this, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, I mean, ultimately it was, appealed and the right verdict was made. But in the interim, it was it was very slow, the rebuild, because the community it was in, we were talking about that, how we're sort of like the last to be thought about, you know what I mean, when it comes to that, resources go elsewhere and we're almost like an afterthought. So it was a long time before these places were, sort of like cleaned up and rebuilt and made into other entities, you know what I mean? Where there was a Thrifties, it became like a Save On, which then became CVS, which, so it's just, yeah, it's still the same thing. It's just a different name. Same BS, different branding on it. Yeah.
And that happens often when we think of the Black community and the impacts of it.
Right.
So in that, writing to performing, what's the difference? Do you write when you're writing a piece that it's like, okay, I'm going to perform this, or okay, this is just for me? What's the difference in that?
Yeah, I don't always know right away, but I test it out on the people that whose opinion I trust and who matter a lot to me. So I have a writing partner in Texas. His name is Larry Mayfield. Shout out to Larry Mayfield.
What's up, Larry?
What's up, Larry? So hey, Larry, as we always say on the phone. Hey, Gia. Hey, Larry. So yeah, he is a very astute, and he's an abstract poet, but I don't know, he's very good at like gauging my stuff, and the stuff that he liked that I later went on to perform other places got the bigger response than the other stuff that I like for myself that I share. I'm like, okay, that's just gonna remain just and for YouTube. The ones that don't really make it are the ones that I then put on YouTube, because they're all my babies. So I feel like they all deserve something. They deserve to exist somewhere outside of my notebook. Okay. And if it doesn't help everybody, maybe it could at least help somebody. So that's my process.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now, what was your dad's process? Did you ever get to see that or explore that?
That I couldn't tell you. He definitely talked about it, though, in terms of like the spirits. Funny enough, I've experienced that sense myself. I first read it in like some liner notes of his, and I was like, the spirits, what is my dad talking about? And I was very like, a teenager, angry at my parents anyway, like,
rebellious teenager.
Yeah, and it had gotten out and had become common knowledge that my father was a crack addict and was, just not together, and was missing shows and canceling shows, and so I just had very little respect for him at the time. Like, you're not being a father to me, you're not being an artist either, what are you? Oh yeah, that's right, you're a crack addict. So he was just like, okay, we were very like apart at that time, but I was still looking at his stuff, because it was there. Might as well, And I'm reading this stuff, and I'm like, what is he talking about? The spirits. And then, like, a year later, again, something triggered my spirit, and I end up writing. I wrote this piece called Fading into Black, and, like, literally, like, we had periods in high school, and each period lasted 45 minutes, and I wrote it in 40 minutes. Like, I wrote it before the period was even over. And I remember thinking, who's writing? My pen was moving so fast. I was like, am I even writing this? Or is someone, like, writing this for me, or, like, using me as a vessel? Like, I ended up saying later, like, sometimes it feels like you're the pen in God's hand, and he's using you as a vessel to say something that needs to be said. So that's kind of what it felt like. And the first time it was very, like, I didn't recognize it for what it was. But when it happened again, when I was writing Hot, I was like, okay, it's the spirits, like, helping me, using me as a vessel, and, like, yeah, carrying, like, my message through, making it even more potent. So, yeah, I think that that's what my dad, he was really tapped in. Because it hasn't happened to me, like, that often. But from what I understand in my dad's notes, like, in the excerpts from things he's written, it happened to him quite often. He knew how to, because he was a Buddhist, so he knew how to meditate anyway. He and my mom did a lot of chanting. Both my parents were Buddhists. So he knew how to meditate, quiet his mind, and allow himself to be a receptacle. And so, yeah, if you believe in that stuff.
And I actually want to ask, and you frame it and respond, I believe, but my next question is, do you believe that the spirits are always in discussion? Are they always present, and more so it's us having that skill set to center ourselves enough to be present to what's beyond the physical reality, because that's getting into, like, existentialism, metaphysical sciences, and things like that.
Yes, esoteric. But yeah, I believe that they are always there. There's a veil, and it's a spectrum that we're all on in terms of our ability to tap in and, try to, like, cross through the veil, or allow them to cross over through the veil, or pierce the veil. We all have, varying abilities to do that. And to be able to tap into those communications that the spirits are having. I know there are so many times that I shouldn't have made it. Like, there was a building that I was in that was shot at 9 times, and we all luckily no one was injured or killed, but it was just really, I don't know, it gives you PTSD. But basically, when I stood up from the sawdust that was on the ground when we all hit the floor, there was a hole that was in the wall that was directly, when I put my feet in the footprints that I had left in the sawdust, had I stayed standing, it would have, like, shot me in the neck, and I'd have been gone. I'd have been out of here. So
that reminds me of, like, that scene from Pulp Fiction where, well, I like Pulp Fiction, but
I like that movie
basically
too.
It's the same. Like, that happens where it's like something you recognize. Okay, something else stopped this from happening,
right?
But I don't exactly know what it is, because our form of communication may not necessarily be in that same realm in connection.
It's limited.
Definitely. So with that, since going into diving deeper into this journey of performing what you write, what has it been like? And you said your dad said, "Would you be ready?" But first, let's just go to, what has it been like? How do you appreciate it?
Oh man. Well, listen, you're asking me in 2023. And then, like, not to say that I didn't appreciate it before, but like especially now, oh my God, after so many years of being shut in and things being closed and not really being able to perform except for virtually, it has been a blessing. It has been so much fun. It has been just like a rebirth kind of. And it's, yeah, I mean, I'm just so thankful and grateful and blessed and happy and upbeat and optimistic about the future. It just makes me want to give even more, you know? But yeah, it's been a blessing. It's been fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are some of those things you think your dad was saying you need to be ready for?
Snakes in the grass. Because even as careful as he was, he didn't even spot all of them. I'm having to fend off the ones that were left behind, that were left over, that he didn't catch, you know? So, yeah. And it's just the same, you know, thing that he cautioned everyone at his concerts. He'd often say, be careful where you get your information. Make sure that where you're getting it is a reputable source. Vet the people who you choose to have around you. Make sure you don't have a George Santos on your team, you know, or a Marjorie Taylor Greene, you know, or a Lauren Boebert or Kevin McCarthy. You know what I mean? You got to vet these people because they may be out and out liars. They may be out only for themselves. Or they may just be, you know what I mean, just out for a come up. And you don't want to be, you know, the person that has to deal with the fallout as a result of trusting the wrong people or having the wrong people around you. And yeah, be careful where you get your information. Make sure that it's from a vetted source, not just one source. A source can report anything. Make sure it's being repeated by 3 or 4 other sources, you know, and that they're all basically saying the same thing. It's still not the true story, guys, but at least it's the story that they're deciding to go with. You know what I mean? It's what they've all agreed is going to be the narrative. It may not be the real narrative, the true narrative, but it's the story they're sticking to.
You said vetting process. What's your vetting process of like when you connect with other artists to possibly work with, or let's just stop there.
I Google their names.
Okay.
I check their platforms. I check to see if they've put out anything that, you know, I can view. And some of them, though, are local, and I've seen them in and around town anyway. So, yeah. But now that I'm starting to get, you know, people are starting to reach out to me from other cities and stuff. Yeah, I Google them. I check to see if they have anything online, you know, either written or them performing via video. So, yeah, there are ways to check. And then as far as, I thought you were going to ask, how do I vet, like, when I'm researching or, you know, a certain topic or something like that. Like I said, I make sure it's like, you know, not just, you know, Truth Social that's saying it. Like, I make sure that, or Twitter, I make sure, Facebook, I make sure that it's like the Associated Press, the Washington Post, the New York Times, the LA Times, like, you know, Reuters, like, I make sure Politico, I make sure that like multiple sources are saying it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so unique, especially when we think of the last president, Donald Trump, and the way he presented the whole concept of what fake news is. I do believe that
if fake news were a person, it would be Donald Trump. Like, he was the embodiment of fake news. Like, he oozed fake news.
And I think that's where, like, I usually get into some very interesting discussions with a bunch of people, and I'm definitely not wearing no red hats or anything, but I think the premise of, when I look at the legacy of the United States, the president of the United States of America, and I'm thinking the man that's in hospice care right now, Jimmy Carter, probably seems to be the one that possibly had some honesty. Yeah. But even with President Carter and some of the challenges of what happened to, I don't think a lot of Americans even understand historically, Iran, right, and the position of Iran and what happened with the Shah of Iran. and the role of
the hostage
Ayatollah,
crisis.
and I mean, I'm getting real nerdish, but traditionally, President of the United States of America is a position that, telling the truth, probably not going to necessarily align with. But I do like how you said you can look at the collective story that will be told, and that is something that can at least give some perspective. But I'm big on, as you say, vetting. I say exercise critical thinking, and exercising that critical thought can be it's very surprising. It's very surprising how
when you read between the lines, you can tell what it is they're not saying. You know what I mean?
It's critical thinking. I look at it like running. Like, you have to exercise it so that when a story presents itself, what was it, 3 weeks ago? Here's a classic one. A story presents itself that says Chinese balloon flying over America.
Right.
So as you say,
balloon.
what's not said.
Right.
It's like already with this whole concept and how America propaganda and politics and business kind of already goes to create adversarial relationships.
How they're gonna
exactly. So we've already been conditioned to look at China as if it's an enemy. We've been already conditioned
as an adversary.
Yes.
Right.
And this is all running in critical thinking, symbiotic idea of the many Chinese business people and even the Chinese government hold most of
U.S. patents, and
US
they hold a lot of our debt. Yes.
Produce most.
I think they own like 90% of our debt.
Our aviation systems can tell anything in the sky. My thought process is, being that there are at least currently, I want to say like 60 bases from most corners of China. So I assume if anything were to lift off the ground past 100 feet in China, America knows immediately.
Right.
So for something to fly into the middle of the country, America knew this anyway. So why is this story even a story other than the idea? But it's like, these are the things that are going on. Like when people were saying, like,
I think they were hoping we wouldn't notice, or we wouldn't, we wouldn't be able to distinguish it, or we just like passed off as like whatever. But once we were like, what the hell?
I don't think they did. I think that story was presented as propaganda, because I had some of the most like regular hood gangster people I know saying like, oh, China trying to take it to us. And I'm thinking to myself, first off, you don't really care anything about international diplomacy. I don't think you know anything about the Chinese People's Republic. I don't think you know anything about aviation. I also don't think that you realize that a weather balloon cannot necessarily be manned to fly. Also, China is the biggest producer of drones.
Right.
So, like, I mean, it's so many critical thinking things going through, but I have homies that are straight up like, oh, China trying to take it to us now. Because they've already been conditioned through, hence the power of this media.
Yes, I think they have them confused with North Korea and their missile testing.
But even when I hear about that, and I think of like when you study history, hence the asset of being in spaces like this through books, and history exists usually in books, but you can get history in other ways. My favorite is talking to people.
Yes.
But if most Americans were aware of the ways that the United States government bombed North Korea in the conflict of North Korea, I think it would be so eye-opening to understand the adversarial relationship of most people in North Korea, because the amount of bombs, and it's funny, the general that did that, I collect old magazines and stuff.
Okay.
The general that led the regime change at that time over the North Korea conflict was based out of Michigan. It was more bombing than North Korea.
What?
Yeah, it was more bombing out of North Korea than the America has done up to that point. Up till basically some of the current conflicts that exist. But it decimated that nation.
Yeah.
As bad as Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but most Americans don't know this. Most Americans just are thinking, wow, why don't North Koreans like Americans? And it's like, well, historically,
no, I'm not wondering
it's
that.
A relationship that is a broken relationship.
Absolutely. Gee.
So, these are just the things that go on, like, in my process, like, your vetting, I always try to say, okay, does this, what are the critical thinking questions? What, how, when, where, why? And then furthermore, if I go and layer deeper with that, and then a layer deeper with that, and then a layer deeper within that, usually I get to why am I even being presented? Because that's the other question I sometimes always say. Why is this a news story today?
Right.
What about this makes this the lead story versus the second story or the third story, or, always like at the end
why
of
this and why now?
Yeah, the end of every nightly news story has like some it's a dog that helped
an old lady cross the street.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. After I'm basically being frightened for 28 minutes.
Right.
And for the last 2 minutes, it'll give me something to be like, well, America's doing well. And it's like, okay, I'm in toxic shock just because I think that I've been presented that
emotional manipulation and stuff.
That Russia may start a nuclear war, China may start a war.
Right.
The Republican Party is looking to cut Social Security and Medicare.
Right.
I've watched 28 minutes of this, and then I get 2 minutes of
hey, happy time.
You can donate. You can get a puppy for free. So,
at this local shelter.
Exactly. I can't process, but I think this is the ways where people such as myself in independent media or corporate media have to be very intentional about these messages, already knowing the conditioning that exists and lies in most people.
They have a multi-billion-dollar industry where they study our brains and what we respond to, like this, how we respond to changing in stimuli and how we respond to different tones. That's why in those stupid friggin' commercials for prescriptions, different Keytruda and different, that's why their voices are like this. Side effects may include nosebleed, vomiting, death, constipation, diarrhea, headache, nausea. You know what I mean? They're saying it so calm, though, because they're not going to be, it might make you crap your pants, man. Then we'd be like, oh, crap, I don't want that. You know what I mean? But if they say it calmly and sweetly like this, and then it's like, you're more like, oh, that's not so bad. Maybe I should ask my doctor if Keytruda is right for me. Like, you know what I mean? You're more, apt to, and they study that, though. They study exactly how much sweet versus salt they should put in snacks.
Very much so.
Come on, man.
I mean, in the science,
and why do you think every so often, even if they haven't changed the ingredients, 7-Up or something would be like, new packaging, same great taste. You know what I mean? So it's like because it's to keep us.
Well, 7-Up just completely
change in stimuli.
7-Up. It's funny you mentioned that. 7-Up just completely rebranded to a drink called Starry. So if you're walking through the aisles and you see this Starry drink, and they just basically were one of the biggest sponsors for the NBA All-Star Weekend last weekend. So if you see that drink is 7-Up.
Right.
But also, it sometimes
formerly known as 7-Up.
Sometimes happens for business reasons.
Right.
Here we go.
It always goes back to money. Yeah. Come on now. If you're wondering why 90% of the time it's money.
Here's something that I think most Americans don't realize, even Detroiters. Okay, so General Motors at one point in time was the largest business in the world. General Motors General Motors was almost like larger than
Amazon.
The nation.
Like Amazon, yeah.
Larger than probably like 3 Amazons right now. That's how large General Motors was. General Motors was so large, people deciding to run for president would have to meet with the board of General Motors before they'd even make a decision to run for president. Now, that was the old GM, and I don't think people noticed this. So if you look at General Motors' logo, right now it's a lowercase GM. Because the uppercase GM was the General Motors that after the stock market crash of, what was that, like 2008, 2009?
Yeah, that's when the bubble burst.
All of the pensions, all of the debts, all of the contracts, all the suppliers, all of the business was with the old GM. So there are still currently a lot of lawsuits with that entity. But the new GM, the lowercase GM logo, that's a whole new entity. I don't think a lot of people know that. Like me in marketing and logos and taste making, That's what a lot of times people do. It's like you got like a whole shell. Is in that movie Boiler Room. You got like a whole, they call it like shell company, where it's like we're gonna switch everything over to here.
Right.
Legally, that still exists, but I'm still gonna profit over here. Right. So if you worked at General Motors,
I'm
like
just
your
gonna move
grandfather
my
for 30
assets over here, right?
It's like people like your grandfather worked there for 30 years, want to get a pension,
right?
And guess what? We lost a lot of money. So
we bankrupt over here. Sorry, we broke.
Yep. But over here, I'm still doing business.
Right. They crying broke over here while making bank over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a savvy move that's often done in America.
That's a loophole, man, that a lot of people take advantage of, or a lot of corporations, I should say, take advantage of. Yeah.
But corporations are people. They try to act
like
they're not.
Right.
They try to
but
act
I don't,
like it's different.
I don't want to get it.
I got you.
Distinguish between us, the people, we, the people, and them people, them types of people. Yeah.
I agree. But I also like
different kinds of people.
True.
They a whole different kind of person.
True. So with this creatively, as we get closer to a close, what are you looking forward to? What will be next? What's exciting you? What projects? What in those spaces?
Okay, well, yeah, I'm going to be doing the Be the Revolution event series honoring my father. We're going to be starting in Chicago on what would have been his 74th birthday on April 1st, which is also the first day of National Poetry Month. So, yeah, we're going to be kicking that off in Chicago. Then we're going to be going to Lincoln University on April the 20th. And then we will be, I'm trying to solidify a date in Washington, D.C., because, he lived around the DMZ for a while and talked a lot of crap about D.C. too. And then we're going to be ending in New York City on May 27th, which is the day he transitioned. So, yeah.
Okay, so with that, what's going to be included in this? And then you go into I call that our sibling city.
Okay.
I think Oakland is our twin city, but I think Chicago is our sibling city. And you know how like you kind of sometimes have sibling rivalries. Detroit and Chicago always we
at each other.
But no, it's in good love. It's just like a sibling.
Absolutely, right.
But what will it be? What experience will it be?
Sure. So there's going to be, of course, myself. I'm going to be singing some of his most iconic songs, including The Bottle, Home is Where the Hatred Is, and Johannesburg. I'm going to be doing The Revolution Will Not Be Televised and Whitey on the Moon, as well as some of my pieces, including Hot, that kind of, honors him and talks about he and I as an artist. And we also have a couple of other poets slated to perform. I'm actually hoping in some, I don't have him confirmed for all the dates, but his name is Avery, and he is actually Gladys Knight's grandson, and he's going to be singing background vocals with me on some of the songs. So I'm really excited about, what we're doing. So, and I'm also working on sort of a spoken word mixtape called Mixed Emotions.
Interesting.
And we're personifying.
I like that title.
Yeah, we're personifying different emotions, and it's personification, like you're speaking from their standpoint. Like if you were love, what do you think love would say if love were a person?
I like that.
And what if hate were a person, a human being? Like what kind of personality would hate have? How would he or she present his or herself or their self? So yeah, I'm in charge of love and hate. Someone else is doing fear and courage, and another person is doing truth and lies. So
very interesting. I'm there in both projects. Definitely, if you're gonna be that close to Chicago, Detroiters are like, you need to be coming to Detroit. So I could already know that we'll be having some conversations.
I need a
with
venue,
some creatives here.
you guys. I need to know where I can.
So we'll work that out. We know some people in DC too, so we'll figure out some stuff.
That's what's up.
And that all sounds very creative, very fun. Last question always is, how do people get in contact with you?
Absolutely. So there are several ways. My Instagram is Gialogic, which is GIALOGIK. And you can also, slide in them DMs, y'all. I'm also on Facebook under my government name, which is Gia Scott-Heron, and YouTube as well, Gia Scott-Heron. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Because, I don't have a Twitter handle because Twitter can't handle me. And like I said, we Dragon Lady Spitfire. We don't tweet, we Spitfire. So, yeah. I don't get along with Twitter. I don't like being limited or restricted to 140 characters or less or whatever it is. And then I heard it's like ghetto over there. They be wilding. Posting all kind of nonsense. I don't have time for all of that.
Twitter is definitely an open space for free speech, as they say. So you're getting a lot of, not just people masked as corporations.
Exactly.
A lot of information out that way. So.
And fake check marks and all that you can get. Sure. Instagram is GIALOGIK. And Facebook and YouTube are just my government name, Gia, GIA, and then Scott-Heron. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thank you so much. We're going to close for the Detroit is Different portion, but after, it's going to be questions and stuff. Y'all going to have to come to the next event because Detroit is Different, Source Booksellers. We're going to be doing this again, having a lot of fun. Thank you so much. Peace.